And so one thing I get asked about a lot is how to do oil washes. It's a technique I use a lot. It gives a great result with very little time investment once you kind of get down how to go about doing it. I really like kind of subtle weathering it gives and the control that it gives to pin washes without marring the surface, the high points that you don't want to have darkened. So today I'm going to show you how to make an oil wash, how to apply it, and then just how easy it is to remove to leave in those recesses and get that really nice effect on your models. So when it comes to making the oil wash, the base is going to be Artist White Spirit. I use Winsor & Newton. Use white spirit, not mineral spirits. Not the same thing. People will tell you that it is, but it's not. They behave differently. As far as the oil themselves, I use Grumbascher, Burnt Umber, and Ivory Black. Grumbascher, like, excuse me, Grumbascher, like mid-range oils. They're not the best. They're not the most expensive, but they're not the top end either. I'm going to mix them in this little cup. I typically use a little glass jar from Tamiya to kind of hold it because it'll keep for weeks and weeks and months. And then a synthetic brush. This one is destroyed. This is just a cheapo synthetic. Do not use natural brushes because they'll be ruined in one go. And this is a good flare out for mixing. So you really do not need much of this stuff at all. So we're just going to do, and the black least of all. Black is going to influence the color of the wash way more than the umber, but you do want it to be dark because you are going to want that really rich. You see the umber is also very, very dark, but you'll see that come out in the color of the wash. I'll leave the lid off that just in case we need. So you saw, I mean, really like a pencil eraser amount of umber, and then I don't know, that's maybe a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of white spirit, and then mix this up really, really well. You're going to want to diffuse that oil throughout the white spirit as best you can. That's why I use that kind of flared out brush, cover more surface area. So we're looking, if you can see on the side of that's a little thin, little dark. So we're going to add maybe another pencil eraser worth of the burnt umber and mix that around. And then we'll see what kind of transparency we're working with, kind of thickness we're working with. And this is not, that's going to be great right there. If you can see that, that's a really nice, result. That's what I'm looking for. Viscosity? No. Saturation? One of those. But this is the thickness. This is the kind of density that you want for the oil wash right there. So we're going to be doing it on 2 different colors today. We have some Tau Crisis suits. This one in yellow, and this one in sort of a blue-gray. One of the things I love about doing oil washes and doing pin washing especially is this kind of burnt umber black is going to work for both of these models, even though they're such different schemes. These have been getting in a healthy coat of gloss varnish. I use Liquitex gloss varnish through the airbrush. Works great. You can use whatever gloss varnish works for you. And so we're going to load up a little bit smaller brush. This one's still super flayed out and destroyed, but we're going to load up a little bit smaller brush just because we don't want to drown this thing, but we don't have to be precise either. We can just tap it, and you see how it's getting right into those recesses. And don't worry about all this excess on top here. You can just leave that there. One of the things that makes this technique really save a lot of time is that you do not have to be too fine with this. You're going to want to just make sure that capillary action is going to carry that all the way through. You just tap it, and it's going to just sit right down in those recesses where you want. Right down in those recesses where you want the watch to go. And by capillary action, what I mean is I'm going to tap this at the top, and you're going to watch it fill in like all the way down and back up and around like that, without getting kind of on that top level of the model. But like I said, you don't have to be too fine with it. You almost want to give you definitely want to give a liberal coating to this. Oops, that's all right. Gloss varnish will protect that. So, and just make sure to hit all the recessed areas on the model because you're going to want to give it a uniform look. If I were going to do transfers on this model, I would be applying the transfers before doing the oil wash because everything that you oil wash is going to be affected the same. So if you were to wait and do transfers after the oil wash, the transfers are going to have a little bit different consistency, a little bit different, cleaner look than the rest of the model, and they're going to stand out and look a little unnatural. So when I'm painting, when I'm doing this technique, the last thing, if I'm doing object source lighting, like glowing plasma weapons or something like that, then the object source lighting is going to be the absolute last thing that I do. But the second to last thing that I do is this oil wash. And I make sure that everything, battle damage, everything is done before the oil wash so that everything is affected the same by the oil wash and nothing really stands out as being either too clean or it looks like it's on top of the oil wash rather than being affected by it. So that's what we don't want. We want all the parts of these models to look cohesive, like they've all kind of developed the same grime and the same damage over time that they've been using the suit in battle. So I'm just going to go through, do the same thing to the yellow suit that we did to the gray one. And again, just make sure you get usually all the yellow areas. We're just going to make sure that we're being thorough. You can go back if you see stuff you missed. You just hit it with a little oil wash and then just wipe it off. Super simple. One of the things I love about it. Okay, so it looks like we've gotten pretty good coverage on that one. You do want to wear gloves when you're doing this though, because it is a very messy technique. Now if you can see here, we're almost dry on that one. So I have a couple more suits that are glossed and ready to go. Again, just gloss. And this is a really satisfying, especially for Tau. This is really a great step. Because I don't use any washes when painting this Tau scheme. So it looks a little stark with just the edge highlights and no kind of definition in the recesses to the suits. It looks a little bit flat. But then as soon as this oil wash gets done, it really brings out a lot of those details and a lot of delineation between the different armor panels and the different components on those armor panels, and it really just brings these suits to life, and gives them a little bit grittier finish, than just using a wash wood and then having to go back and touch up the panels where you hit the high points with the wash, and that's not where you wanted it. So this avoids all of that super easily. So this is just plain white spirit, and Q-tips. So this first suit that we did is pretty much dry. So we're just gonna dip the cotton bud in the Q-tip and going against the grain with where we want to leave the wash. So with this, we want to leave it in those horizontal panel lines. So we're gonna kind of go up and down. But again, you do not need to be too fine with this. You do not want to press very hard. If you can get a little overzealous, I know I have plenty of times. If you press really hard and just try to rub this stuff off, it can rub some paint off, but it'll also go down. It'll also push the cotton bud into the recesses, and it'll remove the oil wash from those recesses as well. And that's really not what you want. You want to leave it. It's the whole point. Is you want to leave it in those depressions, in those recesses. So you can start to see in the middle of that suit there, see those panel lines, how well defined those are now. That looks fantastic. Really happy with that. Getting the suit up here on the cockpit, or where the cockpit would be, the helmet would be, the side of these thrusters, just really perfectly defined, doesn't mar the top of doesn't mar that upper coat of paint at all. And then when we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to matte varnish it and call it a day. Put it on the base and put another one in the books. So again, just real light, taking off that oil wash from the surface, and you'll see it just melts right off the surface there. Just comes right off, and it's great. Doesn't affect the paint underneath, as long as you're not, again, you want to be gentle. Let the white spirit do the work, and hit the back of these legs. So where this is going to be more matte in the recesses. So if you're doing like a Custodes or something where you're doing a satin varnish over the armor, this is going to add a little bit of matte, which is a little bit of that visual interest, little contrast, which is always good. And that, oops, missed a little spot there. Kind of get the toes. And if your cotton bud's kind of flaring out and drying up, just get the next one. But you want to make sure there's a good amount of white spirit on it. The white spirit is going to evaporate, so you don't want to soak the model in it, but if, I'm using a pretty good amount of white spirit, and I'm not worried about it. Because it'll evaporate right off there. Let it dry. Usually takes, maybe an hour, 45 minutes, and then you'll be ready for matte varnish and basing. So that's a result of that pin wash on the gray suit. Just hit this yellow suit real quick, where you're really going to see a drastic drastic change from just the basic yellow. So let's do the front of this real quick, and then we'll do a side by side with one of these suits that hasn't had the oil wash, so you can really see the result of that effect. I love this part. This is great. Really outlining those shapes. And Tau take, as much as I love Tau, they really do take this technique perfectly. It saves you from having to get in on all those armor panels. Look at that. Pow. Love that. So here you can see the difference between the pre-oil wash on the right and the post-oil wash on the left. Just a world of difference between those two. It looks so much more polished, so much more finished. Same with the gray suit, just excellent definition, a little bit dirtier. So it's a great technique. I hope you find that useful. If you have any questions, just let me know. And thanks. Talk to you soon.